During my overseas deployment serving my nation, my spouse, Marissa, convinced my elderly mother, Evelyn, to modify our family trust. My name is Liam Riley. I'm 38 years old, and I've dedicated 18 years of my life to the United States Air Force as a communications specialist. I spent the last 10 months at a forward operating base, meticulously managing intelligence transmissions and dreaming of the rolling hills of West Virginia. 3 days after my return to Charleston, I discovered the altered documents tucked away in my mother's desk drawer. The family trust, originally established by my late father, had been significantly changed. No, completely overhauled, with Marissa, my wife of 9 years, designated as the primary trustee. My mother had been relegated to a secondary beneficiary position. The document's date revealed it was signed 4 months into my deployment. I sat in my childhood home study, meticulously examining every line of the revised paperwork. This house, a legacy spanning 4 generations of my family, held immense sentimental value. The 15 acres of pristine West Virginian landscape it occupied were intended to remain within our family forever. My father's unwavering wish. "Everything all right in here, Liam?" Marissa appeared in the doorway, casually leaning against the frame as she often did. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she wore the pearl earrings I'd gifted her for our anniversary, 3 years prior. I quickly slid the papers back into the folder. "Just reviewing some paperwork," I mumbled, evading a direct answer. "Your mother's finances were a complete mess," she explained, her voice laced with a helpful, almost condescending tone. "I reorganized everything while you were away. Someone had to take charge." I simply nodded, unable to articulate my immediate feelings. "I've been paying all her bills, managing the property taxes," Marissa continued, as if this justified everything. "The trust needed updating, and your mother wholeheartedly agreed." My mother sat in the living room, engrossed in a daytime television show, the volume impossibly loud. At 83, she was showing signs of increasing memory lapses, repeating herself frequently. In our recent video calls from overseas, she had displayed moments of severe cognitive confusion, often unsure of the day. "Thanks for keeping things organized," I finally managed. "Of course, Liam. Take all the time you need to readjust to being home," she offered, her smile bordering on patronizing. That evening, long after Marissa retired to bed, I sat on the back porch, contemplating my father's approach to life. A decorated military officer himself, he had always taught me that the most vocal individual is rarely the strongest. The following morning, I kissed Marissa goodbye as she left for her position at Summit Financial. I told her I'd spend the day with my mother, concealing the trust documents in my jacket pocket. I met Marissa 10 years ago, at a cafe near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, during my assignment there. She was sharp, driven, and possessed a talent for making people feel valued. We married a year later. She had an immediate rapport with my mother, a blessing after my father's passing 6 years ago. Dad had always been the responsible one, the meticulous planner. Diagnosed with lung cancer, he ensured all affairs were in order. "Take care of your mother," he'd instructed on his final day. "Keep the house and land in the family. It's non-negotiable." His trust felt impenetrable, or so I believed. For years, Marissa had voiced her displeasure at living in a rented property, situated so close to my mother's substantial estate. She repeatedly suggested we build a home on the land. I always refused. The property was my mother's sanctuary, a place for her to enjoy her remaining years. My deployments became more frequent over the past 3 years. Each homecoming revealed subtle shifts. My mother seemed increasingly reliant on Marissa. My wife had taken control of my mother's checkbook, medication schedule, and medical appointments. "She's becoming forgetful," Marissa had explained. "She needs assistance, Liam." This seemed reasonable, until it didn't. On my second day back, I took my mother to lunch, just the two of us. We went to the Bluebird Diner, a small establishment she and Dad had frequented every Sunday after church services. "How are you truly doing, Mom?" I asked after we ordered. She smiled, her hand slightly trembling as she sipped her water. "Getting by," she replied. "Marissa has been a tremendous help." I noticed the trust had been modified, I stated, maintaining a calm tone. She looked confused. "Was it? The documents you signed about the house and property a few months ago." Mom frowned. "Marissa gives me so many papers to sign, bills and other things. She explains them, but..." She trailed off. "I get confused sometimes." My stomach clenched. "What kind of papers?" "User 2. Insurance, banking documents. She said it's to protect the assets while you're gone, that you'd want her to handle the finances." Mom leaned forward, concern etched on her face. "Did I do something wrong, Cameron?" I covered her hand with mine. "No, Mom. You didn't do anything wrong. On the drive home, Mom fell asleep. I called an old army buddy, now a lawyer. Keeping my voice low, I explained the situation. Don't confront her yet, he advised. Let's see how deep this goes. 3 days later, I found the bank statements. It wasn't an intentional search. While helping my mother sort through old photographs, she mentioned wanting to show me the positive bank statements Marissa had brought over. What statements are those, Mom? From the bank, she said. The investments are doing well. I found the folder in her bedside table. Inside were statements from 3 previously unknown accounts. 2 were recently opened joint accounts between Marissa and my mother, with withdrawal privileges exclusively for Marissa. The third was a brokerage account, where the family's long-term investments, nearly $500,000 accumulated by my father over decades, had been moved. $80,000 withdrawn in the last 6 months, in increments ranging from $7,000 to $18,000. All withdrawal slips bore my mother's unsteady signature. I sat on the bed's edge, the documents strewn around me like evidence at a crime scene. This wasn't opportunistic behavior. This was systematic, premeditated. My mother stood in the doorway, observing me with worried eyes. Are the numbers good? She asked. Marissa says not to worry about the details. I smiled reassuringly. Everything's fine, Mom. I'm just catching up. That night, Marissa suggested a celebratory dinner to mark my return. We went to an elegant restaurant downtown, where she ordered champagne. She wore a new dress I'd never seen before, and displayed expensive-looking jewelry. You seem distracted, she remarked, touching my hand. Still adjusting. I nodded. Just finding my bearings. I've been thinking, she continued, her eyes shining with excitement. Now that you're home, we should discuss building on your mother's land. I've already had preliminary discussions with an architect. I took a sip of water. And what would happen to Mom? We'd care for her. Of course, but that house is too large for her now. There's a wonderful assisted living community near my office. Very exclusive. That's when I knew. The trust, the accounts, the land, all meticulously orchestrated. She had been planning this for years, waiting for the opportune moment when I was far away, and my mother most vulnerable. I didn't confront her. I didn't raise my voice. I smiled and nodded, playing along as she described her vision for our future home on my family's land. I think I need a few weeks to decompress, I said, to return to civilian life, before making significant decisions. She seemed disappointed, but nodded. Of course, take your time. I excused myself to the restroom, and called my attorney friend from the hallway. I need everything you have on elder financial abuse and trust validation, I whispered, and I need it yesterday. Returning to the table, a strange calm settled over me. The betrayal weighed heavily, but clarity sharpened my focus. A week after my discovery, I scheduled an appointment with Arthur Miller, an estate attorney in Huntington specializing in elder law. I drove the 70 miles alone, telling Marissa I was meeting with former Air Force colleagues. Your mother was likely coerced, Arthur stated after reviewing the documents. His office was lined with law books, emanating the scent of leather and polish, but proving it won't be easy. Did she have a cognitive assessment around the time these documents were signed? Not that I'm aware of. I leaned forward. But she's been forgetting things. Names, dates. She repeats questions. Arthur nodded. We'll need a geriatric specialist to evaluate her current state. If she exhibits signs of cognitive decline now, we can argue it was present when she signed. I left with a plan. The next day, I took my mother to Dr. Isabel Carter, who confirmed my suspicions. Early-stage dementia, likely developing for over a year. Has anyone else noticed these symptoms? Dr. Carter asked. My wife, I replied. She's been managing my mother's affairs while I was deployed. Dr. Carter frowned. And she never sought medical evaluation. Apparently not. Armed with the medical documentation, I decided to approach Marissa directly, not with accusations, but with questions. She sat in the kitchen that evening, after my mother had retired. I took Mom to see a specialist today, I began. She's showing signs of dementia. Marissa's expression shifted subtly. That's dreadful, but not surprising. I've noticed memory problems for some time, before or after she signed the amended trust. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What are you implying, Liam? Just trying to establish a timeline, I replied, maintaining a steady voice. For the doctors, I've done nothing but help your mother while you were gone, she said, her voice rising slightly. Who do you think has been here day after day? Certainly not you. I nodded. You're right, and I appreciate everything you've done. I'm just concerned about some financial decisions that were made. What financial decisions? Her tone sharpened. The trust amendments, the new joint accounts, the withdrawals. Those were for your mother's care. She snapped. And household expenses. Everything is documented. I'd like to review those documents. Marissa stood abruptly. I don't appreciate being interrogated, Liam. Not after everything I've sacrificed. Your mother agreed to all of it. A woman with dementia, I said quietly. She wasn't diagnosed then. Marissa grabbed her keys. I need some air. We'll discuss this when you're thinking more clearly. She slammed the door behind her. I sat alone for a long time. The next morning, I received a call from my bank. There had been an attempt to access my personal savings account, an account Marissa had no access to. The attempt failed due to incorrect password entries. That afternoon, I found a certified letter addressed to my mother from the Meadowbrook Assisted Living Facility, confirming her scheduled residency. The move-in date was the following month. The contract bore my mother's signature, dated 3 days after my return. When I showed Mom the letter, she looked bewildered. I don't remember this place. Did I agree to move? Marissa says you did, I replied. She shook her head. I don't want to leave my home, Liam. I promised your father I'd stay here. That night, I changed all my account passwords and placed a security freeze on my credit. Then I called Arthur Miller again. It's worse than we thought, I told him. And I think she knows I'm on to her. 2 days after confronting Marissa, I went to the county clerk's office. I needed to see the original trust amendment myself. Not the copy Marissa possessed, but the official record. The clerk, a woman named Clara, retrieved the file. Riley Family Trust, she confirmed. I opened it and saw something that chilled me to the bone. The notary stamp. The document had been notarized by someone named Bethany Hayes.
Do you know this notary? I asked Clara.
She adjusted her glasses. Bethany? Of course. She's worked at the Miller & Sons law office for years. Miller & Sons. The same firm where Marissa's college roommate, Abigail Miller, was a partner, a connection Marissa had never disclosed during discussions about the trust changes. I thanked Clara and drove directly to Miller & Sons. The receptionist informed me that Abigail was in court, but I could speak with her associate, Bethany Hayes. Bethany seemed uneasy when I introduced myself. You're Marissa's husband, she said, avoiding eye contact. Is there something I can help you with? You notarized a trust amendment for my mother 6 months ago.
She nodded. I did. Everything was in order. Was my mother alone when she signed the document? Bethany hesitated.
I don't specifically recall.
Let me help you recall, I said softly. Was my wife present during the signing? I really can't discuss. My mother has dementia. Bethany. Documented dementia. The amendment stripped her of control over assets she'd held for decades. And it all happened while I was deployed. Her face paled. Mr. Riley? I think you should speak with Abigail about this. I intend to. But first, I'd like to know if you actually witnessed my mother sign those papers, or if you merely stamped a document Marissa brought to you. She stood abruptly. I think this conversation is over. That evening, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Abigail Miller. Liam, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk. We met at a quiet cafe. Abigail looked impeccable in her business suit, but her eyes were troubled. Bethany told me about your visit, she began. I want to be clear that our firm takes notary standards seriously. Did your firm draft the trust amendment? I asked. She sighed. No. Marissa brought the document already prepared. She said it had been drafted by your family attorney, with your knowledge. And my mother? Was she present when it was notarized? Abigail looked down. No. Marissa explained that your mother was ill and couldn't come in. Bethany notarized it, based on Marissa's assurance that your mother had signed it willingly. That's illegal. I said flatly. It is, she confirmed. Abigail met my gaze. I've already contacted the State Bar Association to self-report the violation. Bethany has been suspended pending investigation. Why are you telling me this? Because I've known Marissa since college, and I never thought she'd been. We trailed off. There's more, Liam. Last year she asked me about liquidating property assets and transferring funds offshore. I assumed it was for a client of her financial firm. Now I'm not so sure. Offshore accounts, property liquidation, the assisted living contract. How long had she been planning this? Abigail hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. 3 years ago, Marissa consulted me about divorce proceedings. She wanted to know how military pensions and benefits were divided, whether deployments affected spousal support calculations. The revelation hit me like a punch. 3 years ago, right around when my deployment schedule intensified. Thank you for your honesty, I said, leaving the cafe. I called Arthur Miller. I need to move swiftly, I told him. He'd been planning this for years.
I didn't confront Marissa with what I'd learned. Instead, I feigned normalcy at dinner that night, listening to her discuss home renovations and suggesting selling some of the land to fund my mother's care. I nodded when she mentioned meeting with a financial advisor to streamline our investments. Meanwhile, I built my case. Dr. Carter provided a detailed report on my mother's cognitive state, concluding that symptoms had been developing for at least 18 months. Arthur Miller filed emergency motions to freeze all assets in the trust and the joint accounts Marissa had created. I hired a private investigator who documented Marissa's spending habits, designer clothes, lunches with real estate developers, meetings with luxury home builders. He also uncovered something unexpected: a separate apartment in Huntington, leased 6 months earlier under her maiden name, Thompson. 10 days into my investigation, Arthur called. "The judge has granted our request for temporary guardianship of your mother," he said, "and we've secured a hearing date for next week to contest the trust amendment." That day, I moved my belongings from the master bedroom to the guest room. When Marissa questioned me, I blamed sleeping problems from the deployment. "I thrash around too much," I explained. "Don't want to disturb you." The truth was, I couldn't bear sleeping beside her any longer. 3 days before the hearing, I received a package from the investigator. A flash drive containing financial records Marissa had attempted to delete from her laptop, showing transfers from my mother's accounts to pay off Marissa's personal credit card debt, over $50,000 in 6 months. That evening, Marissa approached me in the kitchen. "We need to talk about your mother," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The assisted living facility needs an answer by Friday." I looked up. "I'm not sure that's the right move for her." Marissa sighed dramatically. "Liam, be realistic. She can't live alone anymore, and we can't properly care for someone with dementia."
We've managed so far. That's because I've been handling everything," she said, irritation creeping into her voice. "But it's not sustainable. The facility is excellent, and the trust will cover the costs." "The trust," I repeated. "The one you had her sign while I was deployed." Something flashed in her eyes. Wariness, perhaps. Then it was gone, replaced by practiced concern. I did what needed to be done. Someone had to step up and make these decisions. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice neutral. "But I'd like to explore other options before moving her." Marissa's smile tightened. "The deposit is non-refundable after Friday." "You made a deposit already." "Of course. Good places have waiting lists." I put down $15,000 to secure her spot. "From my account, not ours." "Don't worry," I nodded, storing this new information. "Let me think about it overnight." The next morning I visited the assisted living facility. The director confirmed the deposit, but seemed confused about the waiting list. "We don't currently have a waiting list," she told me. "We have several units available immediately." When I inquired about the deposit amount, she checked her records. "It shows $5,000 here," she said, "paid by Marissa Thompson. $10,000 unaccounted for." Another piece of the puzzle. That afternoon I finalized the last details with Arthur. All evidence was compiled. All paperwork filed. The forensic accountant completed her analysis. Tomorrow was the hearing. I hadn't told Marissa. She'd find out when the sheriff's deputy served her with the papers in the morning. That night, I sat on the back porch again, gazing at the old oak trees my father had cherished. For the first time in weeks, I felt a semblance of peace. When the sheriff's deputy knocked at 7 a.m., Marissa was still in her bathrobe. I watched from the kitchen as she received the papers, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. "What is this?" she demanded, turning to me. "A court hearing. Today? To invalidate the trust amendment," I said calmly, "and to address the financial irregularities." Financial, she stopped, her face reddening. This is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. The hearing is at 10 a.m., I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Judge Peterson's courtroom. You should probably call your attorney. She stared at me, the papers trembling in her hand. You've been planning this all along, pretending everything was fine. Learned from the best, I replied. We arrived at the courthouse separately. Marissa with a hastily assembled legal team from her firm, me with Arthur Miller, and my mother, who sat beside me looking small but resolute. Judge Patricia Peterson, a stern woman in her 60s, wasted no time. This is a hearing to determine the validity of amendments made to the Riley Family Trust, she began.
For the next 2 hours, Arthur systematically presented our case. Dr. Carter testified about my mother's cognitive state. The forensic accountant detailed the suspicious transfers. Abigail Miller confirmed the improper notarization. The private investigator presented evidence of the secret apartment and the discrepancies in the assisted living deposit. Throughout, Marissa sat stiffly, whispering frantically to her attorneys. When she testified, she attempted to portray herself as the devoted caretaker, stepping in when no one else would. I sacrificed my career advancement to care for my mother-in-law, she insisted. Every financial decision was made with her best interests at heart. That's when Arthur produced the smoking gun, recorded conversations between Marissa and various real estate developers, discussing development plans for the property once the old woman was moved out. Judge Peterson's face hardened as she listened to Marissa's voice, clear and calculating, planning to profit from my family's land. Judge Peterson's ruling was decisive and comprehensive. The court finds clear and convincing evidence that Evelyn Riley was not competent to execute the trust amendment, she declared. Further, there is substantial evidence of undue influence and financial exploitation by Marissa Riley. She ordered the trust restored to its original form, with additional provisions barring Marissa from serving as trustee or beneficiary. All joint accounts were to be dissolved, with funds returned to my mother's sole control. A full forensic audit was ordered to track and recover every missing dollar. Additionally, Judge Peterson concluded, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to elder financial abuse and fraud. Marissa didn't look at me as she left the courtroom. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I turned to my mother, who squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Your father would be proud, she whispered. A week later, I moved my mother into the guest house on our property, a small cottage my father had built years ago as his workshop. I hired a full-time nurse to assist with her care, utilizing funds recovered from Marissa's extravagant spending. The divorce papers were filed the day after the hearing. Marissa didn't contest them. I learned later she'd left West Virginia, heading for Texas where her sister lived. The apartment in Huntington was abandoned, the lease forfeited. She'd taken only what she could carry, 2 suitcases. Sometimes in the evenings I still sit on the back porch, watching the oak trees sway in the West Virginia breeze. The land remains in the family name, as my father intended. The trust is secure, with my younger cousin Samuel, who recently passed the bar, serving as co-trustee alongside me. I don't dwell on Marissa anymore. Some betrayals are too profound for anger to endure. I focus on the positive, morning coffee with my mother, weekend visits from old Air Force friends, and the simple peace of knowing that what was almost lost has been preserved. My father used to say that a man's character is revealed not by the volume of his fight, but by its wisdom. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, I finally understand his meaning.